1992 has been Spain's year in the sun, a year of glittering prizes and hopes for even greater things to come. In July, the cream of the world's athletes competed at the most successful Olympics of modern times in Barcelona. The world's biggest ever trade fair, Expo, attracted millions to the Andalusian capital of Seville. And Madrid, the national capital, was a fitting venue as Europe's city of culture in 1992. For the many visitors who've poured into Spain this year, there's been a unique insight into Europe's fastest growing state. But there's also been a chance to look back at a past that too often saw Spain on the periphery of the great changes that swept Europe. And in the 500th anniversary year of the Spanish discovery of the Americas, there's an awareness that, like Columbus in 1492, Spain could again be about to launch itself on the universe. Much of the credit for the country's international profile must go to King Juan Carlos, descended from the Bourbons, who historically were supposed to have forgotten nothing and learned nothing. Juan Carlos had to learn fast. First, how to win back, and then how to hold on to his crown. Now that crown is among the most secure in Europe. The landlocked wilderness of Extremadura, Spain's most remote province, and the story of the nation's year of triumph rightly starts here. For this was the country that gave birth to Hernán Cortés and launched Spain's great era of conquest. Many of the conquistadores who sailed in the wake of Columbus came from Extremadura. Most, as I discovered, could never even have seen the sea before embarking across the Atlantic. The little town of Guadalupe, with its 14th century monastery, became a shrine for the returning conquerors. And it was to the monastery of Guadalupe here that Columbus brought the first Indians from the Spanish Americas to be baptized. Extremadura in some ways symbolizes Spain itself, a spectacular land with a proud and ancient history, but one that's been slumbering for generations. During 1992, Extremadura too was to awaken to the national spirit of rediscovery with a fine new highway linking it to Madrid. But little of the plundered wealth of the Aztecs and Incas actually came to Extremadura. Instead, it flowed up the river Guadalquivir in a procession of laden galleons to the ancient Andalusian capital of Seville. Seville in the 16th century was the richest city in the richest country on earth. Its cathedral, containing the tomb of Columbus, was second only to St. Peter's in Rome. Seville's fine palaces and public buildings had few equals in Christendom. Seville, 400 years on, as host city for the international trade fair Expo '92, was again being called the most expensive city in the world. And as a new road has opened up Extremadura, the AVE, Spain's high-speed passenger train, has revitalized the country's poorer south. The AVE cuts the rail journey between Madrid and Seville from 6 hours to 3. It meant I'd arrive in good time to meet up with my hosts for what was to be a unique introduction to the new Spain. For this summer, in a television exclusive, I was allowed to witness the most glittering months in Spain's modern history through the eyes of its royal family. I joined King Juan Carlos and Queen Sofia first on an official visit to Expo. From the richest city in the world in the 16th century, Seville had slumped into a provincial backwater. But Expo 92 changed all that. During Spain's Year of Years, the city played host to a spectacular 6-month-long fiesta. More than 100 different countries had stands at Expo. More than 250,000 people a day visited the exhibition, and thousands of them, it seemed, succeeded in shaking hands with their king. It was a remarkable outpouring of affection by a people whose new sense of self-esteem is shared by Juan Carlos himself.
It shows that Spain is able to compete with other countries, that Spain is modern, that all topics of that Spain saying mañana, mañana, it's not anymore there, that we are really precise, and we know how to organize, and we know how to deal with a problem like an Olympic Games or an Expo in Sevilla.
Conduce hacia reflexiones obvias en que destaca el sentido del servicio de esta persona, de San Juan, el sentido de su vinculación a Dios.
San Juan's Day, June the 24th, a special day in the Spanish calendar and the official Saint's Day for King Juan Carlos. Since the death of General Franco, Spain has officially been a secular state, but the Spanish royal family is true to its Catholic heritage. Today, in a small chapel in the grounds of the Zarzuela Palace, the king's father, the Count of Barcelona, and his mother, the Countess, join the royal family at morning mass. For the Count, the success of his son's reign must bring conflicting emotions. The son of a king and the father of a king, Franco ensured that the Count was never to be king in his own right. It's a personal tragedy the king and his father have had to live with since Franco chose the young Juan Carlos as his successor.
I didn't take it because I wanted. I had to take it because the country wanted it, and he decided that I should be the one. And I always respected my father, and I still do, and I love him, and we understand each other, and we are very good friends, and he's my best advisor.
After Mass, the King and Queen hold a small reception for their closest advisors. Also present, Prime Minister Felipe González, and the Spanish princesses, or infantas, Cristina and Elena. Felipe, a cowherd son from Andalusia and Spain's socialist premier for a decade, has a good working relationship with the king. Surprising, perhaps, considering the different ends of Spanish society from which they come.
Mire, yo creo que es la primera vez en mi vida que hago una declaración tan extensa.
I believe this is the first time in my life that I have said as much as I have about my relationship as head of government with His Majesty the King. He has a tremendous concern for Spain's problems and how those problems are developing. This has been the one constant in our relationship which has led me increasingly to admire the king and his ability to respond to the problems of Spain.
Zarzuela, where the royal family make their home, is the smaller of two royal palaces in Madrid. Zarzuela is Spanish for an operetta, a suitable name for something a little less grand than might be expected. To me, who thinks of kings and queens living in grand palaces, this is it's a modest place for a king to live.
Well, I don't think it's too bothered.
But why didn't you?
Quite big.
But it's not as big as the Grand Palace in Madrid, is it?
Well, no, much smaller.
So why didn't you go and live there?
Because it's very inconvenient. I mean, the distances are very, very long and very big, and at the same time you are too much in a big, really official house, and you don't have the sensation to have a private life.
So you built this for yourself?
No, those two wings were built in '73 because we didn't have enough space, and then we decided to build it more or less the same architecture. Mm-hmm. And even this part, you can see in some of the stones left, you can see some, like if some bullets.
Bullets?
Yes,
Yeah.
that went through in the wall. I mean, that one there, you can see there.
Compared to many of Spain's finest buildings, Zarzuela got off lightly in the Spanish Civil War. Whole cities were sacked and 500,000 died as the country tore itself apart. The war ended with victory for the right-wing general Francisco Franco. The heir to the throne, Don Juan, who had actually offered to fight for Franco, was forced into exile, never to be king. But he agreed to hand over his son to be groomed by Franco on the promise that one day the general might allow the young Juan Carlos to rule in his stead. The king's feelings about Franco are still ambivalent.
I never wanted nobody to speak anything bad about Franco to me, because one has to accept from where one comes. And I was put as king by this man.
Juan Carlos married Princess Sofia of Greece in 1962 and took over the reins of the country 17 years ago on Franco's death. Within 3 years of his accession, he'd overturned virtually everything that Franco had stood for. But the major crisis of his reign came on a February afternoon in 1981. During a televised parliamentary session, a right-wing colonel led an attempted coup in the Congress chamber. For 4 desperate hours, the future of Spain hung in the balance. King Juan Carlos was playing squash here at Zarzuela when he first heard that a coup was underway.
And I saw the whole thing on television. Then I started to ring out the military authorities, and because everybody else of the government was taken inside Congress, and they couldn't move, they couldn't go out, or they couldn't phone. And then, as I'm the chief of the armed forces, then I started to give orders, and I started to receive news from the different military authorities and in the different provinces. And then I realized that it was something of a one-man show.
History, people who've written about the coup, have said that you could have fled. Did that go through your mind in that day, in that night, that you might have to flee, you might have to leave the country?
Never.
Ever?
Not a single split of a second.
The morning after the coup attempt, he went on television to reassure the people that Spain was still a democratic monarchy and the colonels had been overthrown.
I think that his dedication and very quick action, especially when he got onto television, put on his uniform and spoke to the Spanish armed forces and made quite clear where he stood and where he expected them to stand, that saved the day. And I think everybody in this country and people in the know abroad realized that the king was the sole person responsible for saving democracy.
Bueno, yo creo que fue un momento clave para la vida política española y en un momento clave para la sociedad española.
The attempted coup was a key event for Spanish society and Spanish political life. And the fact that the king had a negative response to the coup led to a turning point that was extraordinarily important in the role of the institution of the monarchy itself.
El papel de la monarquía seguía siendo un papel, o era un papel extraordinariamente importante.
That role has been very important in terms of the moderation and modernization it has brought to the process of change.
Queen Sofia has been as sure-footed as her husband. She spoke not a word of Spanish when she arrived here 30 years ago. But she's worked hard to carve for herself a special place in the hearts of Spaniards, while choosing, not always, to agree with her husband on some of the more controversial aspects of Spanish life and culture. What about, dare I say, the bullfight? What of English people, British people, can't understand the Spanish attitude towards
You better not ask that, because we can quarrel there.
No problem.
Yes, the British... Why?
I defend the national feast.
You defend
I
it?
accept she doesn't like it. Then we remain like that.
Yes, no problem.
But then, yes, why don't you like it? A lot of British people agree with your wife, you see, the Queen. They say, why do Spaniards do this to their
Because
boys?
I love animals, and so I...
Well, I could ask you about other things also in your country. I think one has to respect traditions in each country. And I think with all honesty and respect to each country.
It's true,
What
though,
about
isn't
the
it?
fox?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's all the
also
time
cruel.
here, isn't it?
It's also very cruel.
Say Brussels turns to Spain and says, we do not want you to continue your bullfights.
I accept the unity of Europe, I accept the economical unity, I accept all that because I believe in Europe. But what I don't believe is that they're going to take things that are really belonging to my country.
More so perhaps than any other European monarch, King Juan Carlos retains a grip on the levers of power within his country. He saw service with the Army, Navy and Air Force, and is never happier than when he's at the controls of a boat or a helicopter. Today we're flying from Madrid to the remote little monastery of Yuste in Extremadura. But His Majesty's enthusiasm for being at the controls doesn't always have totally predictable results, as we discovered on touchdown, or rather, bump down. But with composure restored, the king is soon at the controls again. As well as being a hands-on monarch, King Juan Carlos has a shrewd sense of what the Spanish people expect of him. What they expect especially is to shake his hand.
I think that people always like to be near royalty, and they see that I want to salute all of them, even if you don't have hands enough to give around because you only have two, then you can't give more.
With a father and grandfather both driven into exile, Juan Carlos could hardly forget the fragile nature of the Spanish monarchy, nor does he forget the years of poverty.
I know that my mother, when I was very young, and when I was 3 years old and we were still in Rome, there were some months that they didn't have enough money to pay the rent of the apartment. She had even had to sell some jewels to be able to live, but we were very happy.
The king seems drawn to this ancient monastery village. It was here that one of his forebears, the Emperor Charles V, sought seclusion when he abdicated 400 years ago.
The history of this, for example, is this. They made this for the emperor to come by horseback, up here, because he had gout and he couldn't walk.
Oh?
And then for him to do less movement, they made this road coming up so that he could come on horseback. This was this special armchair that he had for his leg, for his gout. The actual restoration of the monastery was done on the 4th anniversary of his death. Then 1558, 1958. And then the state helped a lot. because if not, it would have been impossible.
Was it in a very bad state?
Pero luego, muchas gracias, ¿eh? Luego, after I say. I think that he found this place because it's a very quiet place in a very quiet region, and he wanted to be away from his, from the central part of the country, and at the same time he wanted to leave his son completely free to reign and to be in Madrid.
But while abdication was clearly the last thing on the king's mind in 1992, I wondered how his son, Prince Felipe, was being groomed for the succession.
Well, I think the most important thing is what he can see on his father, what I'm doing, the example. And to him it's easier because he learned it from me. I had to do it on my own.
You're a king who pays taxes in this country like anyone else.
And how?
You're not going to tell me you're like every Spaniard who tries to avoid paying taxes.
Ah, well, I can't say it, but probably they...
It's important, though, isn't it? Is it important for a king to pay taxes?
I think it is.
Why?
Not because you're king, but because you're Spaniard.
You could easily have got away with it, though. You could have said, no.
Yeah,
No.
but I would have suffered afterwards,
You
probably
would?
the consequences, yes.
You sure about that?
Yes.
They would not like it.
Because the people, no, because then the people say, well, why does he have some special treatment? I already have special treatment because I'm king.
"1992 was Spain's feel-good year, the year when everybody who was anybody just had to be in Spain. It was the year of pretty girls and presidentes, princes and princesses, the year when mañana, to everybody's surprise, happened today. It was the year when the world's last communist dictator could dine with the first democratic monarch of the country both men regard as their motherland, this despite the fact that neither was actually born in Spain. For Fidel Castro especially, as banquet followed banquet, discovering this new Spain must have provided food for thought indeed, as he contemplated the collapsed economy he'd left behind.
Yes, I hope so.
How long is it since you've ridden a bicycle? I mean, a motorbike?
From last year, I don't...
1992 was the year Spain emerged as a major European power. But the hands on the actual reins of power were, refreshingly, not always as sure as they seemed. Need some choke. Especially, as I was discovering, when it came to such mundane matters as landing helicopters or starting the Royal Harley-Davidson. The choke's out. That.
Yeah.
Give that a pull or a push. Pull it out, that's it, and have another go. Spain's royal palace, the magnificent 18th century masterpiece in Madrid, now used by the royal family on state occasions. It's important to get the protocol right, for today the 23 presidents of the Latin American countries are being formally greeted by the King and the Prime Minister. For the King and Felipe González, it's an important political occasion. Spain's ties of blood and history are with the countries of South America. But now, 75% of the country's trade is with the EC. It's essential that the poorer Latin American nations don't think they're being forgotten by the mother country. It's also important to decide what kind of signal to give to Fidel on behalf of the West, now the Soviets have abandoned him. For the visit of the Hispanic-American heads of state, the capital city is almost in a state of armed siege, so tight are the security precautions. But this is not the normal face of Madrid, Europe's city of culture in 1992. And while the Olympic city Barcelona was later to steal many of the headlines, no one who came to Madrid in Spain's Year of Years could fail to be impressed by the elegance and sheer pizzazz of the capital city. Madrid, with its new, vibrant middle class, is surely the symbol of Spain's coming of age, a proud, modern city that can take its place confidently alongside Rome, Paris or London. But there was also the downside to Spain's year in the sun. Not all Spaniards shared in the fruits of '92. Unemployment is high, average wages low, the economy still fragile. And the country still has bitter internal divisions with Basques and Catalans eyeing the shifting borders of Europe with envy. During '92, Spain was also trying to kick one of Europe's most serious drug habits. Only recently was the taking of certain drugs made illegal. Queen Sofia has taken a special interest in her country's drug problem. On a visit to Bolivia, she actually sampled the coca leaf herself.
The leaf is like tea leaves when you drink tea, or coffee when you drink coffee, or, you know, it's one of those stimulants for the heights. But it's a different thing that when you take it to another country and you make it into a drug.
It is true. You believe that because you've seen both sides of it, obviously.
Because I took it myself. I took this tea at the heights, which helps you overcome the first moments of the altitude.
Is there any tiny solution to the problem of dealing with South America, which is the biggest provider of the drug, and Europe and Spain too, which is the biggest user of this? Is there any bridge that can bring together that gap?
I think what one has to do is to try and mentalize people that a drug in the positive sense is for sick people. It's for getting well, and not for destroying people in the negative sense.
Why drugs, though? Why, out of all the things you could do? And I know you're interested in
it's a devastating topic for all families. I think it's absolutely terrible.
No part of Spain was out of the spotlight in '92. But perhaps no city in the world made as many headlines as the designer-crazy capital of Catalonia, Months before the Olympics, Catalan banners were draped from Barcelona balconies. And at the official opening of the Olympic Stadium in the spring, King Juan Carlos could hardly make himself heard above the whistles and jeers of the Catalan nationalists. It was hard to see a Spanish flag anywhere. The cause of Catalan separatism looked like being the only winner at the massively hyped Olympics that were to come. Barcelona, the city of Miro, Picasso, Dali and Gaudi, was showing a freshly scrubbed, if no less surrealistic face to the world. For King Juan Carlos and his queen, and for Prince Felipe, who was actually competing in the Olympics, the city of Barcelona held the key to the ultimate success of the Year of Spain. In the days leading up to the Olympics, the royal tactics were clear. Avoid any conflict between Catalan nationalism and Spanish pride about whose games they actually were, and trust in the good sense of all Spaniards.
I think the main part of the Catalonians are Spaniards, and the main part of their idea is always thinking of Spain too. It's very clear that Spain is a whole unit, and that Catalonia is part of Spain, and we're very proud of Catalonia as we are of the rest of Spain.
But you obviously felt there was a doubt beforehand. There was a kind of a nervousness about whether it would happen.
Yes, one never knows beforehand what can happen. One always hopes for the best. But doubt, I don't think there's been any doubt.
And in the event, as 4 billion television viewers around the world now know, the 25th Olympiad was a brilliant success. From the moment a single arrow set flame to the Olympic torch, the whole Games came alight in a breathtaking spectacle. And in 2 memorable weeks, the Catalan cause gained what centuries of history and the genius of its artists could not provide, a worldwide platform. The royal family seemed almost never to leave the stadium during the Games, and it was their example which ensured that the eventual Olympic winners were not the record number of Spanish gold medalists, nor even Barcelona or Catalonia, but Spain itself.
I was very proud of the Spanish team when they came into the stadium to see your own son, which is Crown Prince, carrying the Spanish flag, the flag of the team, in front. Well, it was a big emotion for the whole family.
That moment was kind of incredible, completely incredible. The first scene I had was my sister crying her eyes out. She was trying, actually, I think, to take a picture. And she was handling about the camera, and suddenly she realized she couldn't and just looked up and burst out in tears. It seemed ages walking around, but funnily enough, the stadium kind of shrunk on you. You know, you see all these faces and people cheering and so on.
But in a year that has rarely seen the British royals off the front pages of the tabloids, the Spanish press too suddenly began to take an interest in the affairs of their royal family. Prince Felipe was first under the spotlight. His alleged forbidden passion for a non-aristocratic Spanish girl was splashed in magazines across Europe.
They like that story because it's a nice story to talk about. But I find the most important thing is to find a person that is capable of facing the job that you have in the future and that is capable of leading the family into a good education.
Prince Andrew married a commoner. Princess Anne married a commoner. And so did Prince Charles, for that matter. Is Prince Felipe allowed to marry a commoner as well?
Yes. It depends on the king and on the Congress also.
They have a say. They have a say in who he marries.
If it's really a non-proper person, but when you can imagine there are very few persons that are not proper persons, I mean.
But it was a Spanish tabloid that was first to break the unwritten code that the king and queen's personal privacy should be respected. A private trip to Switzerland by the king produced banner headlines. This cartoon in the same newspaper suggested that Queen Sofia was not amused at his absence.
What can annoy you is that if they say nonsense or they say lies or they speak about things that they have no means to talk about.
The Spanish press has always kept its distance slightly and let you live your lives. But now, and particularly this year, there's been a tremendous amount of interest, lots of stories.
Maybe it's because of the 1992 year that they're more interested in one's life, I suppose.
And you hope that after it's all gone, it will fade away?
One doesn't know how you know, things change a lot, and so I don't know if it's going to go back to what it was or if it's going to change into something else, or one doesn't know.
But it doesn't concern you
Not
overly
no.
at the moment?
It's difficult with the press because they create an image of you, and people like to follow that image through the press and through the magazines and so on. But I think you have to learn to cope with that.
But within Spain itself, a huge groundswell of support for the royal family's right to a private life swept away the innuendos. And as the royal family arrived in Mallorca, Spain's equivalent of Balmoral, for a well-earned summer break, the Spanish press was again solidly behind them.
Y eso en alguna determinada prensa, aquella que tiene más tendencia al sensacionalismo o al
This
amarillismo,
produced in certain sectors of the press, that sector which tends towards sensationalism, a ridiculous campaign which even went so far as to question the constitutional correctness of what had happened. There was a completely uncalled for, over-the-top, veritable storm in a teacup. Well, that's what I think over a private visit of 3 or 4 days to Switzerland, I ask you. There really isn't any point in creating a great fuss, since it's all rather trivial. This sensationalist press which demands constitutional referenda at the drop of a hat is the same one which makes no comment at all about major financial scandals which have rather more impact on the citizens of this country than some little private trip the king makes.
The Maravent Palace, just outside Palma, Mallorca. This is where the Spanish royal family come each summer to relax. The atmosphere is informal, with the younger royals, businessmen and politicians rubbing shoulders with the senior crowned heads of Europe. Queen Sophia's brother, King Constantine of Greece, along with the Queen and their family, are annual guests for the King's Cup, Mallorca's premier sailing event. Virtually every member of the royal party competes. Princess Christina skippered an all-female team, including her cousin, Princess Alexia of Greece. Queen Sophia, a former Olympic competitor herself, crewed for her son. Prince Felipe was still getting over his disappointment at failing to emulate his father and his uncle, the King of Greece, by winning an Olympic sailing medal.
¿Hace unos días ya? Sí. Oye, Pepe, va bien, ¿no?
The king rarely misses his own cup competition. This year, he invited our crew to join him on board the Bribon, his one-tonner sailing yacht, as he made his way to the starting line. Have you ever won your own cup, sir?
Yes, about 3 or 4 times.
Isn't it a bit embarrassing to win your own cup?
No.
Why not?
Well, because it's competition and the best one wins. If you're not the best one, you don't win. Doesn't matter if you're king or you're not king.
Few are more skillful than Juan Carlos when it comes to steering a course between the contrasting poles of monarch and man of the people. Sailing is the king's favourite sport, and it's as democratic as it is competitive. In the Bribons class competition, the king seeks no quarter, and none is given. He's philosophical about the fact that kings can't always be winners, even in their own cup competition. Nor does owning a motorcycle collection mean kings can always be expert mechanics.
That worked. Oye, dile al mecánico que venga, el que ha traído esto. Mira, ahí. Yo le daba y no funcionaba. Y he hecho así y estaba muerto.
Mounted on one of his many motorbikes and disguised by a crash helmet, The king can speed through the outskirts of Palma unrecognized, sometimes to the consternation of his subjects.
I was driving to Madrid and then I saw somebody doing wanting a lift. He had a can in the hand and he said, I need some petrol for my car. I said, well, I take you to the pump station, to the next petrol station. And I stopped there and he said, well, thank you very much. I said, thank you. He said, by the way, who are you? I said, well, it doesn't matter. I'm very happy to have helped you. He said, well, come on, tell me. And then I put off my helmet and he was horrified.
It wasn't until Franco's death that Juan Carlos was sure the crown would actually be his, and the years in waiting seem to have attuned him to the feelings of ordinary Spaniards. They seem also to have given him a greater appreciation for the privileges of royalty. The Royal Yacht Fortuna has a full-time crew and experienced skipper. But there's never any doubt about who takes the wheel when Juan Carlos is on board. If you have the fastest boat in Spanish waters, why not show it? Especially when you can leave even the most determined paparazzis in your wake. But not even the Fortuna can escape the ordinary people of Spain, nor do the royal family seem to want to. Bathing around the coast of Mallorca is a public spectator sport. There's no privacy for royals or anyone else, nor any dignified way of avoiding the inevitable.
I saw these cameras. No.
In Britain, the Queen has said she believes the monarchy is a job for life. I wondered if the same applied in Spain.
Although you're a king for life, but you don't necessarily have to be in office, so to speak, for life. So you can have a transition type period in which you have the help of whoever is in front of you, who gives you experience and who tells you all the secrets. And I think that's the best way it can work out. You can never be comfortable in your position, and in Spain they value what you do every single day. So every single day is a new adventure, you know. Every single day you're going to have to pass a new exam.
So you sense an element still of danger in Spain as far as the monarchy is concerned?
I just picture it like that. I think that people value you for what you're doing constantly, not for what you've done in the past.
Few of the crowned heads of Europe seem more at ease with their subjects than the Spanish royal family, but few seem to work harder or more shrewdly at promoting the cause of their citizens. Since the King and Queen began holidaying in Mallorca, the island has undergone a subtle transformation. Gone is the old package tour image. In its place, a reputation among the European fast set, rivaling traditional glamour spots like Cannes and Monte Carlo. You must be aware of the responsibility you have as a family to come here each year to keep the economy slightly raised, to keep it all going.
But we don't come for that reason. We come because we enjoy the place. I don't know, maybe us coming here could have contributed in a way. But where one sees changes is, let's say, in the towns. But in the villages, it's absolutely exactly as it always has been.
Spain's year in the sun moves towards autumn. Soon the royal party must return to Madrid and affairs of state, but not before a final family gathering at a local restaurant. This quayside eating place in the old port of Andratx is a particular favourite. Security is at a minimum, and regular customers think nothing of coming across to say hello. The public relations are superb. 2 of Europe's oldest ruling houses, 2 kings, 2 queens, 3 princes and 3 princesses dining out on a summer's night at a crowded pavement restaurant. A simple family gathering, but in its way perhaps as significant as many of the far grander royal occasions during this uniquely memorable year. Certainly there could hardly be a clearer demonstration that the Spanish monarchy sits easily with its people. In a year which has seen few countries or leaders enhance their reputations, Spain in 1992 has been the obvious exception. Prime Minister Felipe González sums up the general feeling.
Podemos quitarnos de encima algunos de los sanbenitos históricos.
This year has given us an opportunity of getting rid of some of the historic myths concerning Spain. That it is an inefficient country, that Spaniards are incapable of organizing, and so on.
Y segundo, han servido para proyectar, una excusa para desarrollarnos.
Firstly, this has given us an excuse to develop our infrastructure within the country. And secondly, it has enabled us to show outsiders that we are capable of being every bit as efficient as countries who have always claimed that they are very efficient.
After such a year, the whole nation might have felt entitled to take a well-earned siesta. But this was Spain in 1992, a country still with a bit of catching up to do, but one that has captured the world's imagination. A country with a hands-on king, going places in a hurry, with the siesta suddenly a thing of the past.